Hi everybody, thanks Chris, thanks Miles for having us. And just before we get going, I know, like me, all of you will be thinking of John Caldwell and his family, and an absolutely appalling and shocking attack. And I know we're all thinking of them and praying hard for a strong recovery for John. But it's a reminder, actually, that there are some in our society that want to take us back to the past. And I know that none of us want to see that happen. We want to look forward. And actually, that's what I saw when Chris and I were here on one of my previous visits at the end of last year, and we went to Harland and Wolff and saw all the incredible investment that's going in, the new Royal Navy contracts, the jobs that are being created. It was an enormous sign of promise about what was possible. And again, Miles is doing it right here with the investment that's happening in this factory and facility and jobs that are being created. It's a sign of what is possible, and that's the potential that I am so keen to realise for the people of Northern Ireland. But I also know that things are not working as they should be. And the protocol that was negotiated as it was being implemented was causing real challenges for people, for families, for businesses here in Northern Ireland. And in too many ways, it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel that the balance of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement that was so painstakingly negotiated and settled for almost a quarter of a century, that balance had been disrupted. And that's why I've spent a lot of time together with Chris and others working really hard to try and find a resolution on that thorny issue. And I'm really pleased. In fact, I'm over the moon that yesterday we managed to have a decisive breakthrough with our negotiations with the EU, reached agreement, the new Windsor framework, that I think is an extraordinary positive step for Northern Ireland. And it represents, as the European Union President herself said, a historic moment for us to move forward and resolve some of the difficulties of the past. But what does it achieve? Well, in a nutshell, it does three things. The first is it ensures that goods can flow freely across our United Kingdom internal market. So that if someone is sending something from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, we've managed to create something called a green lane, so it can just move very smoothly without tons of customs paperwork or hassle or checks. We've made sure that that process feels so anybody as if they're in the same country, because they are in the same country, and it didn't feel like that before, and that was disrupting businesses and supply lines. So that bit has been fixed, which is brilliant. But also, it's not just businesses that are sending things up and or back and forth across, also people. Someone sending their granddaughter a birthday present in a parcel, someone doing online shopping. All of that was also about to need tons of customs hassle, and that would have been ridiculous, right? So we've managed to fix all of that as well. So things can just move freely and smoothly between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And that's what the Green Lane is about. But it's also about making sure that the same goods are available. And that brings me on to my second point. And that's about protecting Northern Ireland's place in our union. Now, when you're part of a country, you expect that you get all the same benefits of being part of that country wherever you live. And in too many ways, that didn't feel like it was working. Right? When you went to the garden centre and you couldn't get the same oak trees. I remember famously the Jubilee, when we celebrated Her Late Majesty's Jubilee, there were these Jubilee oaks. They weren't available in Northern Ireland's garden centres. Seed potatoes, such an important part of Northern Ireland's horticultural industry, not available. You think about medicines. We have the situation where it was going to be the case that the UK might licence a really impressive new drug to help treat cancer, and it wouldn't be available for patients here in Northern Ireland. When I was Chancellor, I was cutting taxes. In fact, I cut taxes on beer duty in pubs, which we can do once we left the EU. We could say, actually, we're going to have one tax for beer that you buy elsewhere, but when you're in the pub, you want to have a lower tax on beer. And we could do that, and I announced it. And it's going to happen in the rest of the UK this summer, but it wasn't able to happen in Northern Ireland. And that didn't seem right at all. When you take your pet on holiday, it's another example. Someone coming to take their pet on holiday had to get a rabies jab. They had to get a certificate from their vet. They had to get tapeworm treatment. And that all is clearly ridiculous. So those are all the ways in which I felt, hang on, we're not part of the same country. Well, we've resolved all of those issues thanks to the work we've done. And crucially, I talked about product availability. The hassle of getting a supermarket lorry from Great Britain to Northern Ireland was enormous. Hundreds of certificates, tons of bureaucracy to get through, and worse. What was available in Great Britain on the shelves in the supermarkets, which I know is a bit challenging at the moment, but it's getting better, but more generally, was not available in the shelves in Northern Ireland, and that wasn't right. And we've resolved all those issues so that there's going to be the same things in both places, which is as it should be. And that brings me on to the third thing. And the third thing is really important. It's about sovereignty. It's about all of you. It's about making sure you, the people of Northern Ireland, and your elected representatives are in control, and that you have a say in what happens to you. And I think for too many people, it felt like, hang on, we accept that we have access to the EU market, and that's a good thing, and we accept that we don't want to have a border on the island of Ireland, a hard border. We accept that, and that's a good thing. And because of that, we recognise that there is some role for EU law, but we need to have a say on that. Can't just ignore us when it comes to that. And that was what was missing. And we did something really special yesterday. We created this new thing called the Stormont Break, which means that your assembly is going to be able to have a look at any of the new EU laws that come down the pipe and say, hang on, if there's something that's really serious that we think is going to have a really big impact and we can't find any way to resolve it, then we have the ability to say no, that we can block it. And at which point the UK government will have a veto on that new rule, and that puts you in the driving seat. So that is a really powerful new mechanism that we've created. It puts democracy and sovereignty back in Northern Ireland where it belongs, and I think is a really powerful commitment to all of you that the concerns that I've heard, that Chris has heard over weeks, months and years have been listened to, taken seriously and now acted on. And I'm here to answer your questions. I'm here to listen to you, as I have been over the past months that I've had this job, about what we can do to make your lives better, because that's ultimately what I'm here for. Every day when I'm doing this job, I'm figuring out how can I make a positive difference for all of you. And I knew that the protocol was the thing that was making the biggest difference, the biggest problem, and that's why we needed to put the most effort in. I'm really pleased that we were able to achieve that yesterday, and I believe, hand on heart, that it provides a basis for all the parties, all the communities here, to look at it, to look at the detail, consider it, and they will see that it is a big step forward, that it does address the concerns that people have. And I hope will allow them to come together, put all the division and arguments of the past behind us, come together and move forward together and start to look forward to a brighter future for Northern Ireland. That's what I think is now possible, and that's what I'd love to talk to you all about and take your questions. So thank you.